49ers Web Zone No Huddle podcast, part of the Odyssey Network. I'm Al. He's Brian.
What
A little
up?
bit of a different tone than the last show we had with the news. Obviously, Nick Bosa comes to terms with the Niners. Big thing for me, Brian, is they're going into the season now whole. They're ready to go after this championship, and it's an important year, and now they're there. And I was listening to Adam Schefter was on Pat McAfee earlier today, and he was talking about what happened with Bosa. He said, I guess we're recording this on a Thursday. Bosa signed on a Wednesday. Wednesday morning, he said they were pretty far apart. With the words that Schefter used was a huge gap. And basically what he thinks happened is Bosa said to his agents, like, listen, like, get this done. I want to be there. I want to get with my teammates. And who knows if the Niners came down or Bosa came down or the Niners met him. Who knows what happened. But they got it done. 5 years, 170 million, 120-ish guaranteed, 122, whatever it was.
122.
It's a big contract that makes sense. The contract makes sense to me. It's kind of what I thought about what he would get, maybe a little bit more in guarantees, but it's done and we move on.
You know, honestly, here's the biggest thing that at least the biggest takeaway. If Bosa came down, I mean, I can't imagine what he was asking for. His contract is $34 million in average annual value, which by far and away beats Aaron Donald. And then the 122.5 fully guaranteed is way more than Aaron Donald, and significantly more, almost $40 million more than TJ Watt, who I believe had 85 million guaranteed. But my biggest takeaway is that it is a 5-year extension that kicks in after next year, which means that he is here until, was it 2030?
Gotta do that math.
Yeah, 2030, right?
Like that, yeah.
And also he's here until he's 31 years old. So he is signed through his prime with the 49ers, which I'd have to assume that was probably the biggest hangup. And I would assume, like Deebo Samuel, Bosa was probably initially looking for like a 4-year deal so that he could hit the market again in his late 20s and try and cash in one more time. So I would be very interested to know just what the logistics of this contract negotiation was, and where he gave in and where the 49ers gave in and all of that. And then the other big news was that the 49ers restructured Trent Williams and George Kittle and cleared up $23 million in cap space for 2023. Now, does that have to do with possibly front loading some of Bosa's contract, some of that bonus money? I don't know, because again, it's an extension that doesn't kick in until after his rookie deal is over. So I don't know enough about the cap and the logistics of that to speak eloquently or intelligently about it. But it would seem reasonable to me that extension doesn't affect his 2023 cap number. It may not lower it like we were anticipating, but I don't think it would raise it. So I don't know. It's interesting. And so the other question is, does that portend another move by the 49ers? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe they're just looking for flexibility for 2023, that if a trade candidate comes available at the trade deadline, they could pull the trigger on it and make a move. I don't know. There are some edge rushers that I think could be had. Brian Burns being one. I don't think that they're looking that direction just because of the cost. Oh man, it would be unfair.
Imagine Bosa and Burns? Oh man.
Oh, it'd be incredible. But you know who else I think could be had is Chase Young in Washington.
Maybe.
I think he could be had, and possibly Danielle Hunter in Minnesota. And so, you know, these are moves I think that they could be eyeing, because there aren't really any free agent edge players anymore after Ngakoue signed with the Bears. So yeah, I mean, tremendous news. Kudos to the 49ers for getting this done. Kudos to Bosa for getting this done. And I have to imagine that, you know, he plays a fairly significant role on Sunday. You know, TJ Watt basically reported last year, less than a week before the season started, went out on that first game and got 2 sacks, but he also went out in that game and got injured. And that's my big fear. So my hope is cooler heads prevail, that he plays, but he's not getting that full load. And but he's still out there to help the team and hopefully get a victory out here in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, and I don't think he's going to play an insane amount of snaps. And listen, they just committed to him for the next 6 years. You want him for the next 6 years. You're not going to, week one. Listen, they lost to the Bears last year in week one. It's not the end of the world if they lose this game, right? It's how they finish this season. So I think they're going to be careful with him as they should and ease him in, and that's fine. If he's on the field for 35 snaps, great. Whatever it is. I mean, I don't love it obviously, but it is what it is, and that's what you work through with it. But the thing, this is exciting if you're a 49ers fan. Yeah, it took long. It's not the way we wanted it to happen, but he's here. And what you have now, to me, what I think if we're still doing the show in 6 years and Bosa's at the end or signs or whatever, signs another contract, we're going to say this is one of the best 49ers defensive players of all time. I think we're going to talk about him with Ronnie Lott. We're going to talk about him with Patrick Willis. He's going to be an all-time dude. He can become the 3rd player this season since 1982 with 15 plus sacks in 3 of his first 5 career seasons. And he basically missed an entire season with his ACL. He is insane. Absolutely insane. He's arguably the best defensive player in the league. I think it's fair to make that argument.
Yeah,
there's Aaron Donald, TJ Watt, but Bosa, you can at least put in the argument.
Micah Parsons
for sure. Yeah, who will probably get more than this next year.
Oh, 100%.
Bosa's QB pressures last season, including the playoffs, he had 98. This is from Jeff Deeney, so from Pro Football Focus.
Mm-hmm.
And the other guys on the Niners had 23. Cleveland Farrell, Drake Jackson had 16, Kerry Hyder had 14, and Austin Bryant had 10. So this guy was essential to not only this season, but moving forward, because we talked about the contracts and who are you paying. This is a guy you're building around for the next 5 or 6 years. You get the way the NFL is played right now. It's the quarterback. Can you protect the quarterback? Do you have a quarterback? Can you get after the quarterback?
Yes.
Right. That's sort of the game. And the Niners maybe have the best guy to get after the quarterback, and you have to lock that down, and you have to build around him. And even Trent Williams was talking, and I'm paraphrasing what he said, but he was kind of like, yeah, it was on our mind. Like, he's the best defensive player in the league. Sure, we were thinking about it. Sure, we want him here. So now they have him, and after what was a really tumultuous offseason, and look, we were honest with what we thought. We were miserable the last month. We don't like any of this shit with Bosa not being here and the land stuff. We're honest. But right now, I think, at least where I'm coming from, and you can answer how you feel, it happened. I don't want any of this shit to ever happen again, but the team is whole, ready to compete for a title in 2023, which is a gigantic season. And it kind of feels like right now, all right, man, foot on the gas, let's go.
Well, and not only that, but I feel like there was other good news coming out of practice, which is that everybody on the team is healthy. They're not going to be missing anybody in week 1, including Ray McLeod, which I think is huge, and Jake Moody. And so, we talked about the special teams, especially in the preseason, was not great to say the least. And part of the issue was what's happening with Moody, but part of the other issue is with Ray McLeod injured. Where is the return game? And we didn't really find one. We didn't find anybody. No. Right? It was Deshaun Jameson, who isn't on the team anymore. Danny Gray, but he's injured, right? Like, they started rotating guys through, but they didn't find anybody. So to have Ray McLeod back and available is huge. Elijah Mitchell is healthy and ready to go, which I think is huge. Especially if you're hoping that CMC makes it through another season, another full season. He's going to need, Elijah Mitchell to spell him. And Jordan Mason is healthy and playing. And, there really isn't anybody of consequence at this point that will be missing in week 1, which is huge. And so, it felt not great. Even we recorded on Tuesday, and I had terrible vibes for this game, and just that avalanche of good news on Wednesday, which was these players returning from injury and Nick Bosa signing. And I feel a lot better about week 1. I'm still, I don't know if they win this game still. I think this is a really, really tough game, especially for a team that starts slow. and we'll
Yeah.
we'll preview the game here in a second. But at the very least, I have significantly higher hopes for this game than I did 48 hours ago.
You know what's funny about picking games and doing the show? So I don't know how much you've been paying attention to any social media, and I try not to, but I did read some. Sometimes I read some stuff. But so we did our game picks, and you get, they put out snippets of what we say and clips and things like that. So there was one thing on Facebook where we were talking about how we think the Niners were going to lose in week 1, and there were a couple people who were like, fuck you guys, you're not real fans. I'm
Someone called you a
unliking this.
Steelers
This is
fan.
just because we predicted a loss in the 2023 season. Sorry.
Yeah.
And then on a totally separate clip where we were talking about how we think they're going to beat the Eagles. Oh, you guys are homers. Oh yeah, you're living in like so you can't win. You can't win doing this stuff. It's crazy. No matter what you do, somebody's going to come in and tell you why you suck. It's just inevitable. So
what I loved was what I loved is the tweet that David sent out, just essentially asking fans, hey, what is your record prediction? Right. Here's a link to hear what our guys had to say, but what is your record prediction? And the number of people that are predicting like 13, 14 wins, like actual legitimate, no bullshit, predicting like an undefeated season. And I'm just like, man, whoo, some people out there. I mean, I respect the fandom, right? But that's some high expectations, man. That's some high expectations. So we'll see.
I was talking to a friend of mine today who's a big Cowboys fan, and I think the Cowboys are going to be really good this year. I love the Brandon Cooks ad. I like that Tony Pollard's going to get more touches this year. Love their front seven. Dak needs to be better in the playoffs, but I really like the Cowboys. The Cowboys kind of scared me a little bit this year.
Yeah.
And they were like coming back. Well, the Niners have kind of bullied us in the playoffs and we can't get over the hump with them and things like that. And they're like, do you think they're gonna do it again? They're gonna be in the NFC Championship again. And I'm like, I think they can do. They obviously have the team to do it, but what would worry me is at some point the ball's gonna bounce the wrong way. They've gotten a lot of good. You could argue the Purdy injury was a gigantic blow, but they've had a lot of things go their way to win that, which is great. You need that. The Patriots needed it. The '80s Niners needed it. You need things to go your way to win games, especially playoff games. It happens. But I was just, man, I'm really worried that just law of averages, the ball bounces the wrong way one time. A tip happens, an interception that gets dropped gets picked off. So that's kind of in my head too with it. It's really tough to make 4 out of 5 NFC championships. So if this team does it this year, and they're certainly capable of it in a shitty conference and a loaded roster, it says a lot about what they've done. It really does. So it's going to be exciting, but it starts with week 1, I guess. So
yeah, one of my favorite things is, I think this team is very difficult for especially national analysts, but just football analysts in general to try and pigeonhole, right? Because you look at this roster, and if you just don't look at the quarterback, you're like, this team is probably the best team in the NFL, roster talent wise. If not, there's second, right? And then you look at the quarterback, and there's so many people that are just like, there's just no way that Brock Purdy can repeat what he did last year, right? It was a tremendous run. It was a stretch of 6 incredible games, and then really, a playoff game in which he won the game and played better than Dak Prescott, which is why they won. And I was hearing it was Nick Wright, right? Nick Wright has been, I appreciate Nick Wright because he really took the 49ers to the carpet for this Trey Lance situation. And I was listening to him the other day. I don't know what he was on. And he was basically like, I just have a hard time believing that the football gods are going to shine favorably upon the 49ers after how they handled Trey Lance, which again is his opinion. But the interesting thing I heard him say was basically, Brock Purdy did this last year, but he did it with CMC and Debo and George Kittle. And it's like, can he do it again? And I'm like, but he still has CMC. He still has George Kittle. He still has Debo. He still has Brandon Ayuk, right? He has everything that he had last year. The only thing he doesn't have is a proven right tackle. And obviously that's a big deal. But outside of that, everything else is the same. So again, why do we have hesitation that he can't repeat, or at the very least come close to matching that performance next year. And that's why this season to me is so fascinating. Is what Brock Purdy did sustainable, or, was it a flash in the pan? And there's no way to know that. And that's why I'm excited for week 1. And I'm just super glad that football is back, like actual genuine means something football, because the preseason is just the preseason, and it is what it is.
That stuff drives me so crazy. Like, of course you need to have good players to be good. What do you need
Right.
to make a Pro Bowl thrown to Jason McAdley and Arnaz Battle? Like, is that
Right.
what you need to see? You're not going to be good throwing to those guys, right?
Yeah.
If you want to relive those
Right.
years with the Niners. Montana was throwing to Dwight Clark and Freddie Solomon and Jerry Rice and John Taylor.
And Roger
Steve Young was
Craig.
throwing it. Roger Craig. You could go on and on. And Steve Young was throwing to Terrell Owens. Steve Young might have thrown to 2 of the top 3 receivers of all time.
Exactly.
Owens and Rice. You have to have good players around you. Like, it's just ridiculous. Like, sometimes I think, honestly, people will not be happy until they see him, like, do a 360, throw off his back foot 50 yards downfield, and hit, again, Jason McAdley for a 50-yard touchdown. Like, what do you want? Like, he's running the offense. He's getting rid of the ball quickly. He's doing what Kyle wants him to. If he keeps doing that and he has a loaded team around him for the next 3 years and he wins 2 Super Bowls and makes 3 Pro Bowls, great. You know what? I'll take
exactly.
it. And then you guys can have your arguments about how good he really is. But I think that stuff is just ridiculous. Patrick Mahomes could probably there are very few quarterbacks who can make people around them better. Very few. Right. Mahomes, Allen, we've been through it. It's a small number that can just elevate everybody around them. If you get one of those guys, great. But this is the most high profile position in the world. And there aren't even 32 good ones that can play
exactly.
At that level.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So, like, and there's only a handful that are elite. So if you get one that's good enough to be really, 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 really good with good people around him, great. Like, what do you want? What do people want? It's just, it drives me crazy.
And I think ultimately it just boils down to this need to tier players, right? This need to rank players, right? And so, how do we rank Brock Purdy? I don't know. He's just got all this talent around him. Well, it doesn't, like, that's the point. I mean, the point is to surround your quarterback with as much talent as possible.
Right.
If you drop Brock Purdy on 25 other teams, is he going to be as good? Probably not. But those aren't the teams he's on. He's on this team with this talent.
Right.
So all he needs to do is exactly what he did last year, which is be Steve Nash, be John Stockton, right? Well, I'll say John Stockton, right?
Yep.
Right. You just be a facilitator and don't try and do too much. And if that's where you're at, I think this team is going to win a lot of games.
Agree. All right. So let's look at this week 1 game that we picked a loss. I may change my prediction. We'll see. We'll see when we get through with this.
Yeah.
But this Steelers team, it's going to be a tough game. I think the weather's going to be bad from what I saw. There could be some rain. And the Steelers are.
Are you serious? More rain on week 1?
Could you imagine like another monsoon or
Come
thunderstorm
on.
they have to play through? But the Steelers are a punch in the mouth kind of team, especially on defense. They're tough. They have some really good players there. Cam Hayward, TJ Watt, Fitzpatrick. There's some really good guys on that side of the ball. And I think it's going to be this a heavyweight fight. I really do. I don't see anybody getting in the 30s. Well, especially if the weather's bad, but I can really see it. I've been saying this for a while. I think it's going to be like a low 20s, high teens type game. I'm interested to see what their offense is going to be because Kenny Pickett last year, I was not buying it. Dude, so we were talking about Purdy. Purdy had what, 13 touchdown passes in 6 games? Pickett had 7. Pickett had 7 touchdown passes last year and 9 interceptions. Yeah. And Pickett's got talent around him. So last year, Kenny Pickett in 13 games, 12 starts, completed 63% of his throws, 2,400 yards, 7 TDs, 9 interceptions. He didn't impress me a lot when I saw him last year. And there's a lot of talent there. Najee Harris is okay. Jalen Warren, I probably like Jalen Warren at running back more than Harris. Then he's got Deontay Johnson, who has a case of the drops, but is a very solid receiver.
Yes.
George Pickens, who could take a huge step forward this year. Yeah. The Firemouth is a good tight end. Isn't Allen Robinson? Allen Robinson's on that team now too.
Allen Robinson is there,
So there's talent there. So we'll see if Pickett looked good in the preseason, but again, who gives a shit if they had 4 touchdowns on their 4 drives. He's going to get tested this game against the Niners D, and he could take a jump this year. He could, but right now, it's hard for me to be scared of Kenny Pickett in that offense. Right now, we'll see if he can prove me wrong. What I worry about is the defense forcing a couple turnovers. Pittsburgh's defense
Exactly.
keeping the game close. The Pittsburgh defense is what worries me a little bit right now.
And that's kind of where I was in terms of thinking that this game was a loss, not so much because I thought that the Pittsburgh offense was going to put it on the 49ers defense, even if Nick Bosa wasn't on the field. I don't believe in their offense that much. What I was worried about was a defense that would force a turnover or two. And, this, and honestly, if when I predicted a loss, like in my mind, I'm thinking like 13-7, right? Where it's not a high scoring game at all. It's just a defensive battle. And in a game like that, one turnover could be the difference. And you made me look up the weather in Pittsburgh, and Sunday it's currently scheduled to be 74 with showers and thunderstorms. Chance of rain 70%. Now it is Thursday, so that obviously can change, and we hope it does. But if it's just a sloppy field, man, this game is going to be probably kind of ugly. And I don't know. It's hard to determine who would come out on top in an ugly slugfest, simply because it's in Pittsburgh. The 49ers are traveling to the East Coast. It's a 10 o'clock game, right? Body clock wise. And if it's nasty, you're not throwing the ball. And that's where I actually think this offense is probably better now throwing the ball than it is running the ball. Not that Christian McCaffrey's a bad running back, not that, the offensive line is bad at run blocking, but there's just so much talent in the pass catchers room with Ayuk, with Debo, with Kittle, with CMC, right? Which you got to include him. I just feel like this team is going to be better passing the ball than they are running the ball. Not that they will abandon the run, because they won't. Kyle Shanahan will never do that. But if they have to win this game on the ground, Cam Hayward in the middle there against Brendel and Banks and Burford, that one scares me. Cam Hayward is a beast in the middle, and they've got a deep defensive line. TJ Watt is a menace. The one area that I think the 49ers can attack and find success is against their linebackers. But again, if you're not able to really throw the ball because the weather sucks, then that kind of goes out the window. And, you've got Mika Fitzpatrick, who is a tremendous rover. He just is basically he plays positionless football. They just put him wherever they want, or just let him basically roam. I also think the weakness of this team right now is on the outside with their outside corners. They've got Joey Porter Jr., which blows my mind, by the way. His dad was a monster, and now Joey Porter Jr. is a slender cornerback. Like, what the heck? But
you ever
Joey
wonder
Porter
about genetics, like the Bosas,
right? Like, how does that work?
Porters, the Surtains, and then you got the Renicks and the Saccos sitting on the ass, man, doing podcasts.
I don't know, that 8-year-old, she's pretty beastly on the softball field, so we'll see. But yeah, so I think the weakness of this Pittsburgh team could be exploited through the air, but if the weather sucks, I don't know how likely that is. So that's kind of where I'm at in terms of just thinking about this game. And I genuinely do believe that it is going to be a defensive battle, in as much as it's going to be, I think if a team scores 20, that is going to be pretty impressive.
Yeah, you mentioned that there's been some concern, and everything I read when they talk about the Niners, like they talk about the offensive line other than Trent Williams, is that middle still going to hold up? Can Colton McKivitz be a good right tackle? And this game is going to test it. Look, last year, Alex Highsmith had 14.5 sacks. Cam Hayward had 10.5 sacks. And that's not even counting a healthy TJ Watt this year, who will probably be double-digit sacks this year. He only had 5.5 last year because he was injured. So they're going to get tested there for sure. I think the Niners Birdie's going to get the ball out quickly. I think you're going to see a lot of 3-step drops, a lot of, like you said, playing point guard and just getting the ball in the hands of Kittle, who looks like he's going to be okay to play. Debo, Ayuk, McCaffrey, as long as it's not super wet out there. I think that's what you'll see, a lot of quick throws, a lot of run after the catch. It's what the Niners do for sure. So, but the offensive line is definitely going to get tested in this game right off the bat. So we'll see how it goes. But, we're talking about all the stuff about the Steelers, but the Niners too, man, again, Debo's coming back saying, had a bad year last year. He's motivated. Brandon Ayuk is looking for a contract, right? You got some Niners who are motivated, and the whole team knows our window is getting close. Our window is getting smaller. This is a big year for us. So, you know what this year feels like to me, Brian, a little bit in a way? 1994. Because that 1994 team, there was just an urgency that we have to win the championship right now. So, what the 94 team did, they went out and they got Ken Norton Jr. and Gary Plummer, and they ended up signing Eric Davis. And they just, there was a feeling of all in that year, a bit of a different way all in, where they went out and got these guys to beat the Cowboys and win a championship. But I feel that way with the Niners now too. There's that all in sort of mentality with them. And you could hear it in their voices and you could hear it when they talk. And when Bosa came in, everybody was really jacked up. You know, it didn't seem like there was any like, oh, he showed up with his $120 million. Like there was none of that. They were like, let's fucking go. Like they know they need this guy. And I feel like as much as pressure, and they put a lot of pressure on themselves that year. If you go back and read about that year, or talk to people, they knew like, listen, we need to get it done this year. We need to beat Dallas. They had to have a talk with George Seifert where they had to be like, George, calm down. He was obsessed with the Cowboys. Like we'll get this. We'll get this. I remember reading, I forget what book it was, but I read about that. And I think it's similar for this team. This team is going to be very focused this year to get it done. It's what it feels like. So I'm excited now that they're whole to see what's going to happen come Sunday and how they're going to approach that.
And I agree. And that's why, you know, I said earlier, they've cleared that cap space with Kittle and Williams. And to me, that just screams we're waiting to make one more move. And I don't know if that's an edge player. I don't know if that's possibly going after somebody that may be available to play opposite Charvarius Ward, right? Which, you know, arguably the biggest or arguably the weakest link on this defense. And I don't even think he's a weak link, but is outside with Diamador Lenore or Ambry Thomas, right? Because if Lenore is going to play in the slot, we don't know that. So I'm wondering again, are they looking to make another move? I don't know if that move is going to be made now, right? Because week 1 is 3 days away. Or actually week 1 starts today. The Chiefs and the Lions play tonight, but
in about 10 minutes.
I think they're in that same mindset, right? Which is whatever moves we need to make, we're going to make. We're all in. But it feels less like they're all in like the Rams were, right? It feels like they're all in, but they've made more strategic moves. They haven't just, you know, it's not a fuck them picks mentality, right? They've got a full slew of draft picks, and maybe they do send another first rounder for, you know, I don't know, Marshawn Lattimore maybe, or I don't, whatever the case may be. I mean, obviously Brian Burns would be ideal. Brad Graham of the SF Niners. His head might explode if Brian Burns makes it to the 49ers. That's been his pet project, is trying to get Brian Burns here for a couple years now. But again, like a Chase Young, a Danielle Hunter, you know, like I said, maybe another corner to start opposite Ward, and you move Lenore in the slot. Now you've strengthened that position. So yeah, I agree with you. They're all in. And it just feels like now that everything is settled, now that Bosa's in-house, now that the Trey Lance saga is over, Brock Purdy's voted a captain by his teammates. It's obvious that he is respected by his teammates. He's beloved in that locker room. Not that Trey Lance wasn't. For everything we've heard, Trey Lance was a tremendous teammate. His teammates loved him, but it's obvious that they believe in Brock Purdy. And there's something to be said about a team that believes that every time they step on that field, there's no one better than them. And this team believes that. And you could argue that that's true, right? Maybe the only way that that's not true is if they're stepping on the field with Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. But hey, he's not immortal, right? And no one is. So yeah, if this season starts 0-1, I don't think that the sky is going to fall. But I really do believe that this team is going to make a run. And it felt 2 or 3 weeks ago like the vibes were just too off for this to be the year. And now it feels like, okay, we've taken a breath, things have settled, and it just feels like this is the year to make the run. And I'm excited I'm excited to be on the train with them.
And the difference, I think you brought up the Rams example. The Rams seem like they had a lot of hired guns. The Niners seem like they just support their core. Like this is a core thing for the Niners. These are core players who have been here for a while, and the moves they make support that core.
The only two guys that you could say aren't are Trent Williams, but Trent Williams has been here for 3 seasons now, and Javon Hargrave, right? There's your Deion Sanders move, right? That's your Deion Sanders move from '94.
Yeah, I feel like
your hired gun there.
Yeah, I'd put
not
Williams
quite the same
in
impact,
core.
But
yeah, Williams has been there for a little bit. Maybe Travarius Ward is a little, but it's the Warners, it's the Kittles, it's the Debos, it's the Armsteads. It's people.
Well, I guess CMC. We didn't think about CMC.
Oh yeah, he's a hired gun too. So it's a mix, but they're still trying. They're getting the mix to support that core. But what they have done, that was leading me into my next point. You saw them in 2019, like our passing game kind of blows. Let's go out and get Emmanuel Sanders, and he made a huge difference. You saw it last year. Like our record's not good, but we think we're good. We can get back into it, and they make the move for Christian McCaffrey. So they will make moves. John Lynch, Adam Peters, and Kyle Shanahan, they will be aggressive. So you can look for them to do something. So, all right, Brian, do you want to change your pick for this game before we get out of here, or what do you want to do?
See, that feels like that I don't have the courage of my convictions if I change my pick. But also things feel different. Things feel different than 48 hours ago. Yeah. But I think with the weather being week 1, this team typically starts slow, but this team has also never started with CMC. So that's the other thing to take into account. It's hard or Brock Purdy, right? Exactly. And I'll tell you what, that offense, when Purdy was in the preseason, it looked like it picked up right where it left off. So, I think this offense is going to be just fine. I think it's going to be one of the top offenses in the league, but the Steelers finished strong. They've got a ferocious defense. They're at home. It's 10:00 start time. I'm still going to pick a do I want to do this? It feels like if I pick a loss and they lose, like that's going to be my fault. So here's what I'm going to say. I don't know if the 49ers are going to win this game or not. I think they have a good shot. And so I will pick the 49ers to win, but I still think it's going to be a low scoring game. And I'll say, if it's raining, I'm going to say 16-7 game winner, 3rd round pick, Jake Moody. Let's go. But if it's not raining, I'll say 20-13.
Yeah, I thought the Niners would squeak by in this game originally if they had Bosa. And then when I didn't think they were going to have Bosa, I did not think they were going to win. But I'm going to change my pick. And maybe those people who told us that we aren't fans and are unfollowing 49ers Web Zone will refollow this if they put this clip up.
God, there we go. There we go.
Jobs. But yeah, so I'm going to change it. I think the Niners are going to squeak it out. And I really do. I'm just looking forward to seeing a team that's all in like this. Just get after it this year. Just enjoy the season. Just week to week. Just get after it. It's going to be a fun one. But I think they're going to start 1-0, and there's going to be some losses along the way. They're not going 17-0, but this is a 12-ish win team. They're going to be okay. They're going to be there in January.
For sure. Health permitting, this team is 12-14 wins. I don't think that's a hot take. And I'm just excited to be along for the ride. It's going to be a fun one.
100%. All right, everybody. Thanks for listening. For Brian, I'm Al.
Later.